Hello and welcome to the Autobiography of a Yogi. Today's reading has to do with Who Am I? Yogananda wrote in his autobiography, "Man is a soul and has a body." When he properly places his sense of identity, he leaves behind all compulsive patterns. So long as he remains confused in his ordinary state of spiritual amnesia, he will know the subtle fetters of environmental law. Like so much of what is densely packed in this classic story, which is itself a scripture for a new age, it requires unpacking, if you will. It's like a zip file in computers. These two simple sentences can be unpacked to reveal a wealth of wisdom. Jesus Christ asked his disciples, I imagine one night around the campfire, or perhaps as they stopped for lunch on a dusty path, he said, "Who do men say I am?" We know from studies of the Judeo-Christian history and scriptures that I am that I am. The God Jehovah is quoted as saying in the Old Testament. The idea of I am, it reminds me of Descartes. Descartes said, I think, therefore I am, but he really got it backwards. I am, therefore I have the capacity to think. The great controversy of whether or not consciousness exists independent of the brain and nervous system rages on, but those of us in the New Thought movement and Vedanta know that it most certainly does, because man is a soul and has a body. In Sanskrit, one of the expressions is tat tvamasi, thou art that. Thou art the Brahman, the eternal soul, the Atman, which is part of Brahman. And so what we have here is the fundamental teaching of metaphysics, East and West. The answer to Jesus' question, which came from Peter and Peter alone, is thou art the Christ, the Son of the living God. But in chapter 1, I think verse 14 of the Apostle John's great epistle is, to as many as received him, to them gave he the power to become the sons of God. You see, that's the immortal promise that God gives us. In the paradise of Adam and Eve, we were sons and daughters, but this isn't a gender thing here, sons of God. In other words, as it says in the Old Testament, man is made in the image of God, you see? And so it is that whereas during the past 2,000 years, the emphasis has been on our sinfulness, our original sin, the original sin of choosing the body, choosing the ego, choosing the world and the senses as our reality, and turning our backs on God, as Adam and Eve, you might say, allegorically did. We do that every day. And so we have to rediscover, like the prodigal son, return home. So this quote is the essence of not just Yogananda's teachings, but the eternal and universal teachings, East and West. The truth that shall make us free is not just the words, but the realization, I am much greater than this body, than my gender, than my culture and language, than my likes and my dislikes, my skills, my successes, my failures. We don't know where we came from before birth. We don't know where we'll go to after death. As science shows to us, this is a vast universe, and either we're nothing, or maybe we are everything. Okay, so long as we remain confused as to who we are, we will know the subtle fetters of environmental law. What are subtle fetters of environmental law? Well, that's pretty straightforward. As long as we feel we have to eat and sleep and have this and do that and avoid this and avoid that, all in vain, because in the end we die anyway. Pardon my sarcasm. As long as we live in this world and the senses are our reality, then we are bound by those realities. Great saints and sages, East and West, fasting, for example, is a part of all religions. The ability to fast for long periods. Jesus went up into the mountains and fasted for 40 days, and Satan tempted him to turn the stones into bread, you see. Down through the ages, devotees, anchorites, and so forth have tried fasting to break the fetter of the hypnosis that I am dependent on food. Well, I don't recommend we start with that particular fetter, of course, but it's an obvious one that gets a lot of attention. We can experiment with this and develop our skills in transcending the food compulsion by once a week having just juices, maybe with a little bit of ground nuts to stabilize with protein to stabilize our blood sugar. Once a month, Yogananda recommended doing that for 3 days, using a gentle herbal laxative in order to detoxify the body. These are just simple things, but there are simple ways to improve your diet and to get away from the compulsion of eating wrongly and so forth. That's very basic. That's very simple. And so what he's saying is that when we identify with our overarching eternal and unbounded sense of self, then we leave behind compulsive patterns. And now that holds a key, doesn't it? The key that it holds is how to overcome bad habits. This is where meditation, when we still the reactive process, the restless thoughts, the tension in the body is relaxed away, and we stare into what seems like the void behind closed eyes, and we begin to get calm and relaxed, and we by practice we get to enjoy what seems like the state of pure being. But in fact, that pure being becomes, in time and with practice, depth of practice, a portal into connection, not rejection, is what it seems at first when you go off to your room. As Jesus said, get thee into thy closet to pray. Go off to our room, shut the door, close our eyes, sit in meditation. Our family members might think we're rejecting them. It might seem to other people that we are turning our backs on the world, but only ultimately in order to see and experience the greater self. That greater self then can be experienced as the self of all people. And therefore, even though there is a certain tendency or stereotype that yogis, those who practice this yoga, are aloof and indifferent to other people, that's a mistake on the part of any yogis who express that. It is in this state of being that we feel the pangs and joys of all men, of all people. Man is a soul and has a body. Live evermore in the overarching consciousness and dynamic, vital, living presence of the spirit that animates this body. All right.